Welcome to Real Questions and Real Faith, where we wrestle with our faith, hopefully grow our faith through asking good questions. And we're going to attempt to answer one today. The question I'm answering today is, am I a true disciple of Jesus? So this is a question that I'm asking. This is a question you should be asking. Am I a true disciple of Jesus? In John 15, Jesus addresses this directly. We're going to look at verses 1 through 6 here in this episode. And we're going to answer that question, am I a true disciple of Jesus? Because in this passage, he's going to contrast a person who is true to one who is not, as far as a disciple. Now, disciple means a learner, but it's a learner with the intent to follow. So a modern equivalent might be apprentice. So if you're an apprentice, if you're apprenticing to become an electrician, you're going to follow an electrician around. You're going to learn by watching what they do. They're going to teach you some things along the way so that you can become a qualified electrician. So you're learning to do. That's the goal. And in the Hebrew Bible, to hear is to obey is kind of the mindset. So, and that would be Jesus' mindset. So Jesus says in John 15:16, which is outside of those 6 verses, but it's in that passage. He says, you didn't choose me. He's talking to his disciples, and he's talking just to his disciples, just to the 12, minus Judas Iscariot, his left, to betray him. So there's just 11 of those guys. And he says, you didn't choose me. In other words, they didn't choose him as their rabbi. I chose you, and I appointed you to go and bear fruit that will last. So Jesus is exercising his sovereign will in choosing them. He's already done that. And he chooses them for a purpose. And the purpose is to bear fruit. And now you're hearing this is a metaphor. He's using this vine analogy. A grapevine has branches, and the grapes that grow on a grapevine actually grow from the branches attached to the grapevine. So common sense, you don't have to be a horticulturist to understand, the branch doesn't bear fruit unless it stays connected to the vine. If you whack it off, it's dead. It's going to die, and it's not going to bear fruit. Well, not every branch bears fruit on a grapevine. Some do, some don't. And so a good vine dresser is going to prune away the growth that maybe is green and alive but isn't bearing fruit, or he's certainly going to whack off the branches that are dead. But he's not going to cut off the branches that are bearing fruit unless he feels like that the nutrients are still being spread too wide, and then he's going to trim away some of the weaker to strengthen the others that are bearing fruit. So Jesus takes this metaphor and he applies it to a spiritual truth, and that is a true disciple of Jesus will bear spiritual fruit as to the extent that he stays connected to the vine that is Jesus. So let me read this passage and then we'll dive in. Jesus is speaking all these words, and Jesus says, I am the true vine. Let me read it out of the NIV. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. Okay, so we see God the Son and God the Father right off the bat. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Now, he's going to say in a minute, the branch represents his followers. Okay, some followers are going to be true disciples, and some followers are going to be false. Okay, he says he cuts off every branch that bears no fruit. So there's a clue that those are probably not true believers. While every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, meaning he cuts away around them so that they will be, and he says right here, so that it will be more fruitful, the branch will be. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. He's saying to them, you've already been pruned around, you've already been cleaned and purified because of the word. In other words, they've heard the word of God through Jesus, and they have believed it to the extent that they're even obeying it. Verse 4 says, remain in me, or abide in me is another good word for that. Remain or abide are the same word. Remain in me, in other words, remain connected branch to the vine, as I also remain in you. He remains connected to us. We're in him. He's in us. No branch can bear fruit by itself. If you cut a branch off and it lies on the ground, it's not going to bear fruit. It must remain in the vine. It must remain connected. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. He's taking that analogy. Verse 5, I am the vine. He's repeating himself. And earlier he said, I am the true vine. Here he says again, I am the vine. You, followers, disciples, are the branches. If you remain in me, abide in me, and I in you, you will, not maybe, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And then he ends with this: if you do not remain in me, if you do not stay connected to the vine, if you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. This assumes the branch has been cut off, thrown away, withers. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned because they're not good for anything else. The wood is not useful for anything but fuel for the fire. And this is a picture of judgment for false disciples. So to follow Jesus is to walk in his ways, his words, his ways, his will, and as a result, you're going to bear spiritual fruit. He says, I'm connected to you. You can't help but bear spiritual fruit. But if you do not stay connected to me, you will not bear fruit, and you will show yourself to not be a true disciple in Jesus. Now, in the following verses, he's going to explain what does fruit look like, what are we talking about when we're talking about spiritual fruit, and we're going to talk about that in the next episode. After that, the next episode, I'm going to talk about how do I bear fruit? What are the things I should be doing that will help me stay connected to Jesus so that I bear much fruit that will last? And so I just want to ask you to think about the question, am I personally a true disciple? Am I truly learning to follow Jesus in his words, ways, and works? Am I doing that? This is the question I have for you. Now, I hope that this has been helpful to you. It will help you grow in your faith as you wrestle with this question. And my hope is that you will wrestle with this question, talk to someone else about it. But if you want to, you can always drop a comment in the comments, ask a question, maybe even clarify, improve on something that I've already said. I didn't say this perfectly. I may have even said something that wasn't quite right. You can help me with that. So feel free to use the comments for those purposes. You can also share this with a friend or someone you know that might really be encouraged at this time. And of course, subscribing always helps me get the word out. So I appreciate you listening, and I hope you'll pass this on soon. Grace and peace to you.